Alright guys, welcome back to another video. Today we will be talking about income taxes, and we are going to look at some viral TikTok videos and react together. So let's see what we have.
I am so over the tax system that we have in the United States. They are taking 30% of our money. That means you and I are working 3 to 4 months a year to hand that over to Uncle Sam. And don't forget, we know why people are struggling, because we also had 25% inflation since the pandemic. So after being taxed 30%, everything we buy with the money left over is 25 to 30% higher. And I'm seeing video after video of people on here saying they actually owe $5,000 or $10,000 more this year in taxes, and they don't have the money because inflation is so outrageous. Then they have to set up a payment plan with the IRS where the IRS will charge you interest and penalties on the money that you owe them. If you're one of the fortunate ones to buy a house, you're going to have to pay property tax until the day you die. And if you go through a hardship and you miss those property tax payments for extended period of time, the government can take your house. We don't own our house, we don't own our cars, we don't even own our own income. And then if you want to be adventurous and be self-employed, you're going to pay even more taxes. Because if you're an employee right now as a W-2 and you look at your pay stub, you're going to see something called FICA. That's Social Security and Medicare for 7.65%. But your employer is also paying 7.65%. That is what is called payroll taxes. But if you are self-employed, you are the employer and employee, even though it's just you. So you have to pay 15.3%. If you want to legally avoid some of those payroll taxes, you have to do this bunch of bullshit paperwork and open up an S corporation to have yourself pay yourself so that you can legally avoid some of these payroll taxes. And then you have all your business expenses. You have to track your miles. If you take a client out to dinner, you got to keep the receipt. Who were you with? What did you talk about? Because God forbid you're friggin' audited. They might even come and take more money. And if you don't pay, they can garnish your wages. Like, what the fuck is this? Why can't we do something simpler? Maybe it's even a consumption tax. I know there's pros and cons that I can do a video on that, but I would love the freedom to walk into a store, see a $20 t-shirt and go, do I really want this t-shirt for $20 and pay the $6 consumption tax on top of it? At least I have the freedom. At least I could own my house, own my car, own my income, and own my decisions.
How did we go from fighting a revolution over a 2% tax on a breakfast beverage to what we pay today? And we're taxed on money when we receive it, when we spend it, when we keep it, when we invest it, and even when we die with it. It gets worse. We commute to work to make that money in a car that is taxed again to register on roads we're already taxed to build, fueled by gas that is taxed even further, and many times through tolls that tax you again. And that's to maintain bridges and highways and tunnels that already have billions of dollars, taxpayer dollars, allocated to them, and they're still falling apart. And then when you get to your office that is taxed to exist, in a corporation that is also taxed to do business, that almost certainly requires permits and other things, which are another tax, you are paid a paycheck that the corporation must match another payroll tax on top of what they have to pay you. Then you go to a home of which you are taxed to own every single year that we bought with money that the government already taxed us on. Oh, by the way, the more money you make and the more you pay in taxes warrants the government taking more and even higher percentages of your money. Now, if you're angry, hold that thought. Our federal tax code is 2,600 pages, 400 pages longer than the unabridged version of the Webster Dictionary. But if you read that tax law cover to cover and you did your taxes solely based on that, you'd probably go to jail. Why? Because that does not include the over 9,000 pages of additional IRS regulations that were never passed into law, but rather written by some bureaucrat sitting in his office that we still have to abide by. Congress never passed that.
So this guy is not wrong. The US tax code is extremely complicated and taxes are super high. Now, he did mention something about S Corp. You see, this is the beautiful thing about the US tax system. Even though taxes are high and they tax you to death and all those things, there are ways around it. They have built-in mechanisms for you to get around it. Now, I don't think that they want everybody to have access to it. That's why it's so complicated. They want rich people with, who have tax attorneys working for them and CPAs working for them to have access, but it's still accessible to you. You just got to put in a little bit more work. Unlike certain countries, like I mentioned in videos before that I'm from Sweden, taxes in Sweden are just high and there's no way around it. The government wants their tax money. Like for instance, if you make $25,000 per year in the US, you're not going to be paying more than like 10% tax on that, 12% after your deductions. In Sweden, if you make $25,000 a year, you're paying 30% off the bat. And there's no deductions, no nothing, unless you have kids or something, So it's not completely hopeless. It's not completely worthless. I think taxes are a scam for the most part, But there are ways around it. You just got to play the game. And when it comes to the whole paying tax on all these bridges and tolls that were built with tax money, if you have a business, you can get around all of that because all those expenses are tax deductible. You can choose to be a part of the system if you have a business. Having a business gives you options. And also, when it comes to consumption tax, they have a consumption tax in Monaco, which is a rich people country. They spend a lot of money there. Like, people will go there only to spend money. So they have a 19% consumption tax, basically a sales tax. So it works. It wouldn't work in the US because people would say, just like this guy said, like, oh, do I need this t-shirt or not? So it wouldn't work. It wouldn't be as effective. Listen, income tax is not going anywhere. Trump says that he wants to get rid of it. He's not going to get rid of it. Like, there's no way any country on the planet would ever get rid of income tax. Income taxes were actually implemented during World War II, and they implemented it as a way of like, okay, we got to raise extra funds for the war, and then we'll get rid of it once the war is over, and they just decided to keep it. Now, Kamala Harris wanted to do something similar. She wanted to tax unrealized gains, which means that if you have a house, it increases in value. You're going to pay tax on the gain, even though you don't sell. And she said, oh, it's only going to be for people who make, $100 million a year, whatever. I think the same thing would have happened there. She would have started with the rich people, and then eventually everyone in the country would be paying the tax on unrealized gain. We'll never know, but that's what I think.
Do you know how much New York takes in taxes from a commission payment? I just received a delayed commission payment from an old job in New York City where I was an employee, not a 1099 contractor. So the taxes are automatically deducted from this commission payment. The gross pay was $1,000 flat. I received $540. I am a normal person, a normal earning person. I am not in a high income tax bracket. New York takes almost 50% of any commission or bonus payments. And what do we get for all these taxes? We get these dirty, disgusting subways that flood when it rains heavy. There's crime everywhere. This is not new to me. Almost my whole career, I've worked on commissions, and I was a 1099 contractor for many years working in real estate. But still, when I see it like this, it's just so crazy. That's why it's so important to have a good accountant.
A couple of years ago, I went to Tokyo, and Tokyo, everyone should go to Tokyo, but it's such a well-functioning society. And it also taught me that in the US, all the excuses that we have for our failing infrastructure and institutions not working are not accurate. We always hear like, oh, we can't compete with China because they have really low wage labor. Tokyo or Japan in general have really high paid labor. They have a lot of social safety nets, salaries are high, taxes are high, but their subway is the best in the world. The infrastructure is perfect, streets are clean, safe. All the complaints that US have as to why we can't have nice things went out the window when I went to Japan. Their airports are beautiful, like everything just works. I think that the issue with the US is corruption. We pay a lot of taxes. We could fix this country with all those tax money, but we don't want to. Like, we start wars and, it gets embezzled and it's going to politicians' private funds. Like, there's a lot of that going on. We have way more than enough taxes if we just had our priorities straight.
Taxes in the United States are an absolute scam. I am not somebody who makes a ton of money by any means, and I just did my taxes, and I also made money on TikTok through the course of 2024. And the amount of taxes that I pay as someone that I don't even think that in California I am making a livable wage, my tax burden is so astronomical, I literally want to cry. The system is not built for unmarried, childless people, and that becomes so glaringly obvious during tax season. The idea that I am going to have to claim on my taxes because I'm indebted to the United States until the day that I die, even if I live outside of the United States, that if I'm single, I'm always going to have a higher tax burden. And I've said it before, where being poor in the United States is so expensive because if you don't own a home, you don't own assets, you don't make money on interest, you don't have any of these like high class tax deductions, you're literally fucked. And the whole system is based off fear because you cannot file and then you just fear that you are going to be audited and then thrown in jail. And I do believe that we are moving towards a system that wants more prisoners so that they can have servants. So anyone that does their taxes during tax season and doesn't get wildly pissed off to know that someone like an Elon Musk, who's sitting in the Oval Office of the United States of America as an unelected official who doesn't pay taxes, is insane. It makes me want to rip my skin off and my blood is boiling at the same time.
As a single person with no kids, you're always going to pay more taxes, and that's because you have no one to take care of. So it actually makes sense. The people who get the biggest tax break or the lowest tax rate is head of household because they are supporting an entire family by themselves. It's not unfair. It actually makes sense. Second, the reason you owe a bunch of tax is because your tax accountant sucks. There are so many ways for you not to have to pay tax, or at least not a ton of tax, if you have an accountant that's really good and knows how to plan and can tell you what to do in your business and give you the right entity structure. Like, there are so many ways to get around this. So if you paid 30, 40, 50% tax on your TikTok earnings, something is wrong. Get a better accountant. Now, she mentioned she lives in California. California has the highest tax in the country of all the states. I think Hawaii is higher, but California is probably number one or number two. You have the option of going to another state. I understand California is awesome. LA is my dream city. I hope to live there one day. But if taxes really bother you, you have the option of leaving. You can go to Florida, which is another amazing state. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's pretty cool. You don't have that option in other countries like France, UK, Spain, Sweden, where I'm from. You can't just leave and go to another state. So at least you have that option going for you. Also, I keep hearing these stories of like, okay, I made a mistake on my taxes, I'm going to jail. You're not going to go to jail. If you make a mistake, even if you make a huge mistake, they're going to tell you, you made this mistake, fix it. Okay, now you owe $5,000. Oh, you can't pay it? Okay, so pay it off over time. Like, you're not going to go to prison just because you made a mistake. That's a myth. We hear this story about Wesley Snipes that he went to prison for not paying tax. That's not the full story. There are people in the United States who believes that paying tax or filing is voluntary. He's one of them. Eventually, he came to court and they said, you owe us like 8 million. And he goes, I'm not paying. They're like, fine, let's settle for this amount. They gave him an even smaller amount to pay. And he said, I'm still not paying. They were like, all right, prison. Because at that point, it is tax fraud. It's tax evasion if you refuse to pay what you owe. But they were nice. They were trying to work with him, but he didn't want to work with them. So don't believe the hype. It's like, oh, he did a mistake and went to prison. It's way more than that. Google that story if you really want to learn what happened. Lastly, when it comes to Elon Musk, yes, he's a billionaire. His tax rate is much lower than like me. But in 2021, Elon Musk paid $12 billion in income tax for exercising his stock options. That is actually the highest amount of tax ever paid by a single individual. So he avoids tax, but he also paid the biggest tax bill ever in 2021. Do with that information what you will. I want the takeaway from this to be that yes, it can feel like the system is rigged against you if you're not a billionaire. The upside is that there is opportunity for you to maybe not become a billionaire, but to at least be able to take advantage of the same tricks. If you have a business or a skill that you want to monetize, you can start a business and take advantage of all the tax breaks. Same tax break that Jeff Bezos is using to not pay tax. The opportunity is out there for everyone. So hopefully I shared some light on some of the tax issues we're facing in this country, and hopefully my commentary was helpful. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments and let's get a discussion going.